with the tank, and they weren't there, thank goodness, I expect those days, and it was a pretty grimy day, you know, but nevertheless it's a nice thing to do. The feeling of flying was nice, and I remember Patrick Troughton, because I know I was in some other play with him, but I can't honestly remember which play, because I think I've probably played over 100 servants, and was glad to do so. So, you know, who knows, I might be in the Guinness Book of Records.
So, out of all the things you've done, what do you think your favourite thing that you've worked on?
I would say that would be a favourite, Doctor Who, because I watch it now and it really is fascinating. Everyone, I'll tell you something, when you were in that, you were famous, whatever you were doing, because everyone used to watch, because we didn't have all these channels that we have now. You literally had BBC One, and then later on ITV came along.
And we had those frightful costumes to wear. They were so uncomfortable because they had all those shells.
That's
they
right.
stuck into you, didn't they?
Yeah. Yes, as well as being in the tank, we actually had several days wandering around the studio set, being sort of fishy, didn't we? Yeah. Yes, making fish down. But we did, as I say, we were fish, so we didn't speak. But look, but actually, I don't know what happened.
I wasn't a fish. I was playing the companions.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yes, it comes back, you know. But,
and I just wanted to say too, because we fascinating what she's talking about, and because our lives crossed over, because I also used to go to the establishment.
oh.
Yeah, and the Buxton, and the Salisbury.
Oh, well, it's Salisbury, yeah. But those were golden days.
They were golden days, weren't they?
Yeah. And the directors then used to know who you were. I can't imagine anyone being like that again. I mean, it was a magical time. Anyway, when I felt it was all going a bit slow, I went to Italy for altogether 8 years to be in the English-speaking theatre in Roma, doing the lead in The Hollow. Met Burt Lancaster, interview with Fellini, he did offer me work, but by then I'd gone. And Pasolini, I did the Canterbury Tales. And as I say, Roman Polanski's Macbeth. Roman Polanski, unfortunately, can't work in England anymore. Was the leading director of drama, Cedric Messina, who did The Merchant of Venice with Maggie Smith. I was always in something of his. He'd always find me an odd corner, if you know what I mean. I could ring up and say, hello, Mary McMillan available. He'd say, oh yes dear, you can be Maggie's lady in waiting. Now, you know, that's just, well, I doubt if that would happen now, would it? Really, no. There were really odd things that happened. Even the bad times were more interesting than some of the good times now, because you never knew what would happen. As I say, the last minute calls from the BBC, get here in an hour, you know, and all that.
Does it amaze you that all these years later we're still sitting here talking about the Doctor Who?
Yeah, I never forget them, because even in Italy, which was sort of a golden time in many ways, although you need to have your own money there, because you don't get any unemployment or housing benefits or anything like that. Things you were hopelessly wrong for, you know. They'd want someone 6 foot tall, and I'd arrive, and Robert Morley said, oh, look what they sent me, a midget, you know. And this was in a theatre. He was very nice, but you know, sort of things like that. So quite frankly, after that you were a bit thirsty, weren't you? And I mean, Michael Caine and things, I know he's so famous now, he was a great buddy, but I mean, it took a long time for people to establish themselves. I mean, and Terence Stamp, who I must say was one of the most beautiful faces I've ever seen. The establishment club was slightly snobbish, I felt. Did you?
No.
Oh, Peter Cook didn't seem to want out-of-work actors. So one night, a whole lot of us, Michael Caine and my lot, all of the chums, we got about 20 of us and just marched in and demanded drinks. And of course that ended the sort of standoff, but I think he thought he was sort of, there was still a bit of class system there. In fact, there is now, but even in the theatre profession, there are some older actors who you had to address as Miss something or Mr. something. You couldn't just slap them on the back and say, hey Stu, you know? Or,
as Doctor Who went on, were you pleased to say you've been in Doctor Who? You know, has it got more and more, more well known?
Yes, because everyone loved Doctor Who, so you were very popular. I don't think they cared about Julius Caesar that much, you know, or other things. I did, but they did. But Doctor Who and Z-Cars were very, very important. And the Forsyte Saga, which I wasn't in, God knows why, but still. And I said, well, desiderare an apparizione in a spettacolo di Fellini, which is pretty painful, but it's, you know, it's all right. Spettacolo is a film, and apparizione is an appearance. And the whole interview, you know, I was sort of winging it. But as I was offered work when I left, you know, obviously I had my picture on. He had a wall of English and Italian actors, and I think I got my picture on the wall. But
just to ask you a little bit about Julia Smith, the finish with, because she obviously went on to create EastEnders. What was your impression of how she was like to work with at the time?
Julia Smith, I don't think I worked with her again. She was quite difficult, but she was also quite clever. She was sort of very grumpy about the boy who fell apart. But, you know, I got on with her all right. I find women directors are every bit as good as the men, because in actual fact the women have to be better than the men to become directors. There was Dorothea Brooking, quite famous, and another one who did Compact, that was the other one, Paddy Russell, Paddy Russell. And I did 2 episodes of Compact with no dice. If you have a very small part, you have to be very careful that the leading actors don't get so carried away that your lines disappear. So I managed to get my lines in with no dice, and it was going, and I say, I managed to get them in, but it was quite a fight. And that is why I think I'm quite quick now, because I never miss a cue wherever I am, if it's a political conference or a debate. I've been on BBC in debates, I don't get paid for those, straw poll. And I once took, what's his name, somebody apart on taking issue, Frederick Forsyth, that's it. They have people on to take them apart. And I think I was the only one who got Frederick Forsyth doesn't just write thrillers, he's also a campaigner for the countryside and a bit of a shooter, as I got that in. But you do have to be very, very quick as I mean, if you muck up a production as a servant, you won't be a servant again. So I used to count the steps to where I had to be, to my mark, and turn the way, I mean, quite technical, although it was so small, it was very exacting in its way, because you couldn't get into the part, like say somebody emoting as Elizabeth I or whatever. You had to just do it as well as you possibly could and make sure you were in character. And I'm very particular now when I see period plays. And I think that's why I gave it up a bit. It was, you have to be like an electric light. You walk along all these corridors at the television centre, knock, you know, and you had to turn on like an electric light and be sort of brilliant.
I think we're going to leave it there for the chat. So, thank you.